Hi guys, John Bailey here, gemstone artist and founder of the Faceting Academy. Today we're going to do a product review on some embedded resin laps. We have two different laps by two different manufacturers that we're going to do a review on. We're going to do some demonstration cutting with them and some macro shots of the finishes that they leave. This is a diamond embedded in a resin base. And these things aren't just a thin painted on coating like the old Resin-tech laps. They have a pretty thick base that is going to last for quite some long period of time. The two laps that we're going to review in this video are the HyperEdge 500. This is created by a guy named Ed Perry down in Sedona, United States. The other lap is called the Dreamer, and it's an 800 is the number designation they give it. It's made by a guy named Daniel Hu in Taiwan. So these two laps. Now, first of all, we want to do full disclosure. I don't resell either of these two products, and I don't receive any commission or other compensation for sales from either company. So any choices that you make based on the video, none of that's going to pay me. We did pay full price to acquire the HyperEdge lap, and I have to disclose that the Dreamer 800 was provided us by the manufacturer for our testing and review. Now, I have a general policy of not publishing hit pieces on products. If I test something and I hate it, if I kind of think it sucks, I'm generally going to keep mom's advice about if we can't say something nice, just don't say anything at all. So generally, I'm not going to do a review about a product I hate. So I'm doing reviews on these two products side by side for only one reason, and that's because I'm testing them at the same time, and I guess also because they're similar technology. So this video is not intended, these reviews are not intended at all to be a competitive side-by-side comparison. That's not the purpose and it's not the spirit of this video. And I don't find these two products to be directly competitive in terms of how I intend to use them in the studio. So the super short review on both of these products is that I find them both very solid, useful products. I find them worthy of the admittedly high price of admission. The whys and wherefores of that assessment are going to follow in the video. If you just want my review, they're both worthy products. I recommend them both. Links to both of these are going to be in the comments down below the video. So here we go on the rest of the review. I use 5 criteria to evaluate a faceting lap. The first criteria is flatness, the runout and the flutter that the lap causes. The finish produced is the second criterion. The speed of work, the rate at which you can remove material or achieve a polish. The compatibility is the fourth criteria, compatibility with materials. If there's any materials that just the lap doesn't like them, if it consistently orange peels something or produces a bad finish, then I'm going to take off points for that because it starts to limit the usefulness of the lap in the shop. The final criterion on which I judge a lap or any other tool is the durability, the longevity, the serviceability of the lap. If it's going to have a short life, there's some laps on the market. There's a resin bonded lap right now that's manufactured in the US that's on the market. It's kind of people are using it as a replacement for the old Resin-tech resin bonded laps. That lap has a really poor lifespan, really poor durability, and so I don't mention it because I don't do hit pieces. But that's a lap that I would subtract points for. Now, both of these laps have really low flutter, which you're going to see during the live testing. I'm going to do a video of our dial indicator to show what the flutter is like. The HyperEdge is quite flat, and it also has very low runout from center to outer edge. Now, the Dreamer lap is slightly domed, and you'll see this on the dial indicator later, that it's higher near the center than on the edge. It also has very, very low flutter. It's a very pleasant laps, both of them, to use because of the low flutter. But with the Dreamer lap, you're going to really need to take extra care to ensure you're always measuring your depth of cut from a specific spot out from the center of the lap. Some people will put a Sharpie pen mark on their lap. Some people are just very attentive to where they always check their depth of cut. Now, this is just a good technique to ensure repeatability, and it's something that we should always do. Even on a super flat, super low run out lap like the Hyper Edge, we always need to do that anyway. We just want to be a little extra attentive if we have a lap that's a little domed. Now, this slightly domed condition is something that's consistent on all the Dreamer laps we tested, because we've tested multiple ones. And I think the manufacturer's working to reduce that issue a bit, but frankly I didn't find it all that bothersome, and it doesn't really amount to a minus points for this tool. I still really very much recommend this tool. Now I want to compare the finish and the speed of cutting, which is our third criteria for evaluating laps. The finish and speed of cutting, and we're going to compare the finish and speed of cutting to the Crystalite plated metal bond standard lap. And this is our workhorse cutting lap. So we're looking at potentially replacing that Crystalite with one or both of these two laps. So that's the Crystalite's what we're going to compare it to. And while the Hyper Edge is comparable in speed of removal to, let's say, a very well used 600 metal bond, the kind of metal bond Crystalite that you would use for cutting sapphire, something you'd be really happy doing that with. It leaves a finish, this 500 lap leaves a finish comparable to the old Resin-tech 600 resin bonded lap. And this is something that we would often use for a pre-polish, and I still have one in my stable, actually, right here. So the Hyper Edge is cutting at a speed comparable to a well-used Crystalite 600 metal bond, but it's leaving a finish comparable to a Resin-tech 600 resin bond. Now, that has some really great implications for us, because we can cut on the Hyper Edge and then we can go directly to polish, skipping a pre-polish lap step in between. Now that cuts a lot of time from our production. Now I found that on small to medium tourmaline or sunstone, for example, I can move very quickly from a 260 topper for gross preforming to the Hyper Edge 500 and then directly to polishing. And I used Voodoo 50,000 on a Diamatrix for the tourmaline, and I used a Voodoo 14 on a Corian for the sunstone, which is my standard polishing tools for those. And the polishing took just a little bit longer than I would use following that Resin-tech lap. So it didn't cost me much time in polishing, and certainly net we were far faster using just the Hyper Edge 500 going straight to polish. Now, while the Dreamer 800 is comparable in speed of removal to a newer one of these Crystalite plated laps, it doesn't leave a finish smooth enough to facilitate going directly to a polish. So I found both of these laps work really nicely at higher speeds also than I would normally run the metal bonded plated laps. They seem to like speed, and they definitely like a lot of water. We get down to our fourth criteria of evaluating faceting cutting laps, and that's compatibility with materials. Now I've tested both of these laps across a variety of materials, including iolite, sunstone, tourmaline, topaz, synthetic alexandrite, and synthetic corundum. and I didn't find any unusual, undesirable behavior with any of those materials. So both of these laps seem quite versatile in terms of materials. Now, both manufacturers, if we're going to talk now about durability, the longevity, the serviceability of the laps, both manufacturers state that these laps can become glazed with use. And you might see videos on the channel, the YouTube channel, about glazing happening on our new bond resin bonded lap. So we kind of know that working on a resin bonded surface, we can get glazing that slows down the cutting, and that perhaps on certain stones might even cause scratching. Now, both manufacturers of these two tools say that their laps might become glazed. Both of them provide very specific instructions for resurfacing or servicing the laps to keep them very sharp and cutting very strongly. In the number of stones that I've tested on these two laps, and I've done quite a few, and I've been pretty aggressive. I've used significant speed and pressure, in part trying to see if I could get them to glaze. And so far, I haven't had any significant slowdown. There's no shininess to either of the surfaces, and the performance hasn't really degraded significantly. So I don't know what's going to be required to get them to glaze, if that will happen at some point. But so far, so good. So let's move on to the demonstration part, and we'll put these laps on our faceting equipment and take some video to show the speed of stock removal. We'll show how flat they are, and after we've done some facets, we'll bring a macro lens and take a look at them.